solving percent problems. We have benchmark percents. We're commonly used percents, such as we start with a 100%, which is the whole, and then 50%, that's half, or we would divide the whole by 2. 25%, you can see there's 4 of those, so that's like having a quarter, like money. So 25%. 20% is split up into 5s. And then 10%, there's 10 of those in a whole. So we can use a double number line. Or a tape diagram, however you would like to look at it. So we're going to put 100%, and then whatever that 100% amount is, $6,400 there with the 100%. And the profit of that is 65%. So the question is, how can we get down to 65% from 100%? And it looks like I could go by 5%. But we could start by going by 10%. So what would 10% of 6,400 be? That's going to be 640. Did you notice what I did? Anytime I find 10% of a number, I can either add a decimal point or just drop that last 0 if it's a 0. And then 5% of a number, of 10% of a number, is going to be half of that number, because 5% is half of 10. So this would be 320. And then to get to the 65% range, how do I go from 5 to 65? And that would be times 13, which that means I'm going to do the same thing to 320, and I'm going to multiply it by 13, which is 4,160. So the profit would be right here, 65%, $4,160. Wrapping paper. So we can do the same thing. Here we're looking for 40%, but I always want to start with 100%. So I have 100% of 1,200 is 1,200. So 40%, I can get there by going by 20s. So if I go all the way back down to 20%, which means how do I get from 20% to 100? It's multiplying by 5. So the opposite would be dividing by 5, which is 240. And then to get back to 40%, how do I get from 20% to 40%? I multiply that by 2, so that would be $480. So complete each double number line to represent the goals of the other 6th grade homerooms using the information from the table. Write the equivalent dollar amount for each percent shown. So we are looking at 6B. And that tells me 60% of the goal is 144. So I'm going to find 60% and plug in 144. So 0% of the goal is always going to be 0, so that's an easy one. Now, I can go down to 10%. So how do I get from 60 to 10? And that's dividing by 6. So that equals 24. And then going up by tens, I'm just going to double it every time. So 48. Or double it and then add 24 each time. I apologize. We're not doubling it every time, but from 40 to, or 20 to 40, we could double it. And now I've got all that filled in. So how do I get from 50% to 100%? I can just double that. And then continue to go up by 10%. From the double number line, I can see that 100% would be 240. So let's look at 60 now. So we are starting with 100% of the money, which is 360. And if I went all the way back down to 10, I could take this 360 and divide it by 10, and I would get 36. And then I can just go up by tens over and over until I fill in the entire number line. So 60% of the money of the goal would then be $216. So using proportions to solve percents, we have an equation that we use. It's part over the whole equals percent over 100. And I am going to teach you how to use that. Okay, Carlos is told that 65% of the students, or 78 students, prefer pizza for lunch according to a recent survey. He wants to know how many students participated in the survey. So we have to determine if the 78 is the part or the whole. And it says 65% of the students or 78. That means 65 goes with 78. So that is our part. The percent is 65. It has the percent sign with it. That is always going to be over 100. And here we are with the proportion. So it is asking how many students participated, which means that is going to be our unknown. The way we're going to solve these, this is a little shortcut. You can always solve this by proportional reasoning or by using the ratios that we've used before, but here's a different method. So we're going to take where you can multiply across, and we're going to multiply. I'm going to make a times symbol. So I'm going to multiply the 78 times 100, and then I go over wherever I can, and I'm going to divide by what's left. So I'm going to take 78 times 100 and divide by 65. Which equals 120. So 120 students participated. Mr. Yoshi has 75 papers. He has graded 60 papers. What percent of papers did Mr. Yoshi grade? So I have to determine what is the part and what is the whole and what we're looking for. So our equation, part over the whole equals percent over 100. So what is he asking for? What percent? So that is our unknown. We don't know what the percent is. What is my part? He has 60 papers graded, and he has a total of 75 papers to grade. So now we're going to do the same thing. So there's only, when you look across, diagonally across, you're always going to have an unknown. And wherever there's not two unknowns, you're going to multiply across. You can just make this into a little time symbol. And then you will go over and divide by what's left. So it's going to be 60 times 100 divided by 75, which equals 80. So he has graded 80% of his papers. Mr. Bowers has graded 45 papers. If this represents 30% of all the papers he needs to grade, how many papers does he need to grade in all? So I have the part over the whole equals the percent over 100. Well, the 30% is easy to fill in. That always goes over 100. And we have to determine which is the part and which is the whole. What are we looking for? How many papers does he need to grade in all? So in all is my clue that it is asking for how many papers in all, and that's our unknown, and he has already graded 45. So I'm going to look, and I'm going to look where the numbers go across, diagonally across. I can make that into a time symbol, and then I can make this into a division symbol, and I divide by what's left. And that will give me my unknown. So 45 times 100, which is 4,500, divided by 30, which equals 150. So he has 150 papers to grade. Okay, you try it. Make sure to put your answer in Edpuzzle.